Good morning, good evening, good day, wherever you are, whatever time it is. I hope you can join together with me and anyone else watching in this act of mindful drawing to give ourselves a chance to relax and reflect and just be absorbed into this act of now. Come along for the ride and let's draw together. And just do a little shading as a warm-up exercise. We could start by just shading in one direction on the paper by laying down subsequent layers of graphite or ink, slowly building next to each other. First, it might start a little fast, getting out some of the movement and the jitters, and then bringing our attention into it and not necessarily slowing it down, but aligning with the speed that we feel comfortable or good moving with here, whether that's fast or slow. It's something that you have intention or control over for a little bit to bring our awareness into that so then we can allow it to fall into a softer, more natural rhythm that lets us be in the space around the motion and the sequential actions. Start to create something here on a page. And as you just move gradually in some direction along the page, this could be linear, like I'm going here, circular, or now I'm sticking with repeated strokes in one direction. I'm going to make my college art teacher happy, but it might also feel right to pick up somewhere and just do a quick back and forth. Right, this is where I would have been a bit scolded for going back and forth fast and using the fingers, but it's not a bad thing to warm them up a little bit, to see how it feels there, and to be reminded of that action that might not serve the best technique, as it tends to make a little more blotchiness or just put us in a bit of a hurry, but also know what it feels like so we recognize it if we're drawing and start falling into that pattern. Here, perhaps a back and forth where I use my arm a little bit more, so I'm not relying so much on the fingers and wrist kinking. Still a chance for a little overlap that gets messy and allows me to move very quickly, so I can feel that starting to have a more technical aspect. I'll move and go back to the single direction, but bringing my attention now to really moving that whole instrument, my arm, my wrist, my pencil, all kind of a vector coming out either from the elbow or from the shoulder, depending on how you might be sitting, and allowing my eye to guide some degree of sequential precision between where the pencil lifts off the page and where it lands, to just layer up this shade in a direction or a pattern. And I can begin to really slow it down and use that to connect in with my body and my breath before we move on to a larger exercise. So just finding new spaces if you run out of room where you are. You're starting to draw one layer of shade, perhaps full breath, maybe one on the in and one on the out. In and out. In, and if it feels comfortable, out. To go at my pacing, feel free, or if your breath moves at a different pacing, just connecting that each time with an action, whether the in comes on the return or on a stroke leaving behind graphite or ink. Doesn't matter. It's just that chance to really get in and get connected to our body, this warm-up stage. Come to terms with our senses so that they're both active and also can be let to function on their own, trusted to be aware of what's going on as we allow our conscious mind to sink in a little bit into the act of drawing. Just a few more breaths in and out. As you feel ready, perhaps you can stay here for the rest of time, just making nice layers of shade, or move to another piece of paper to explore some other acts of drawing. In this case, try shifting over to my pen and see where it goes, as I always like how this one flows along the paper. And I was thinking about using some of this sequential kind of layering of tone or texture in one place to begin to fill out larger shapes or patterns. I think you're starting somewhere, top or bottom, left or right. I'm just beginning with a smallish, quarter-sized circle, working my way around it, maybe gradually spiraling or shifting inwards or outwards to provide some thickness, some value, visually speaking, to the page. And bringing back where we left off with that breath, guiding the circular motion, that cycle, no beginning and no end. And letting go of worrying about where we start on the breath or where we end. We're just letting it flow in and out around this spot here. And as you feel connected and comfortable with the thickening of this circle, I'm just going to shift a little over to the side, right or left, and begin another one. And slowly work my way around a larger circle or area on the page by letting myself sink into each one of these individual moments, short spans of time to calibrate and allow the hand and eye and breath to connect and creating shapes and tone on this page. Breathing in and breathing out around the cycle of the spiral, circle, and draw us in to that space on the page, and then easily recommence. Perhaps we miss our circle from time to time, and just letting the repetitive spiraling action absorb those misconnections. Knowing if we take some time and allow ourselves to breathe, we can come into a space of calm and balance here in this drawing. So we're applying tone to the paper, or in many things in life. It might deviate from the intention or the path. at focusing awareness on where we are, centering around our breath and our other actions and senses, and help us engage with some compassion and also detach when things get us frustrated. Sometimes the ways through are challenging or stressful thoughts and activities can be to allow it to circle a few times in our mind, not to over ruminate or focus, but to play it out and come into relationship with it, to come to terms with how we're feeling, so that those feelings can process through the cycles of attention, and then we can bring our conscious attention and action to that. And through our breath, these meditative practices, we gain some space to process. And I'm just continuing to work around the tone in this local space, increasing the circle or spiral action, and then allowing that to reposition, begin again, each one a new moment, a new connection, perhaps to the different place on the page. Here I find my arm suddenly positioned quite differently as I'm working around this larger space with the repetitive action, and that having to recalibrate how I move my wrists or my fingers or my hand brings a new attention to my body and that connection. When I'm doing the same thing, orbiting this space on the page, I'm also encountering minute new conditions. I'm crossing the median of my larger kind of circular shape here as I move around, and that's bringing the pencil or the pen in front of my vision. So allowing me to readjust and recalibrate my torso, my upper back, my shoulders, my lower back, and my core, to allow for this arm to continue to move freely without bunching in the wrists or the fingers, which can just lead to some cramps, uncomfortable feelings there in the muscles of the hand, those fine motor control muscles that allow us to be somewhat precise in crafting these visual artifacts and these drawings we use for so many things during the day, bringing some attention to them and consciously massaging them through these exercises, helping to prepare them for the day. Maybe we do some writing or a lot of typing and clicking, and giving this space of exercise to those finer instruments, nerves and muscles, joints, get them lubricated, and also primed and connected within our mind, so they don't become relegated to these repetitive work tasks, only contribute to our repetitive stress. And in that notion of repetition, if moving in one direction over and over starts to feel like it's putting too much strain somewhere on a joint or a muscle or just a motion, getting a little cramp beginning in my thumb in this angle, I have some damage in that digit that at certain times starts to act up, using that as perhaps an opportunity to shift direction, move in the opposite way of the circle. See if that changes things up. More precise or less precise, more smooth, more choppy. This pen feels more choppy in this direction. So how can I begin to maybe lighten my grip, slow down my motion, smooth out the flow, reconnected with a centering breath for a while. I'm beginning to reach towards the end of my larger space here. And let's continue inwards, just moving to a new tier or orbit, in or out, aligned or in between, quickly allowing that choice to be made by the visual systems of the eye and the hand connection, and going with whatever new placement may begin to happen as you transition from one layer of the circle to another, a layer of the orbits to another. And on this inner ring, things become a little tighter. I'm trying to bring my attention to slowing down my motion, being very connected to each swoop on the upstroke and the downstroke around this relative to my position here. Feeling the pen or pencil move delicately across the page. It might be in a space here where we can have the fine connection and control of nuance to how hard the pressure is between the pen and the paper. Can we lighten it up to where it maybe takes more revolutions to build the tone and the density on the page, but each of those revolutions comes with greater awareness of the connection between ourselves and this external medium. We're just being more in the body, repositioning our mind into the nervous system, letting it out of our head for a little while. This physical, somatic act of drawing. Much of a runner in the long distance sense, sprints and sports definitely, but I've always felt it was somewhat painful for my body to run. Many years ago, I was given a copy of the book Born to Run, I think by John McDougall or something. Kind of interesting looking at ultramarathons and the Tarahumara Indians in the Copper Canyons of Mexico and their kind of culture around moving, running, being part of it, just on the move in a very kinetic landscape that our bodies can adapt to and thrive in. And they're just one part of some ultra marathoner speaking about getting into running and a way to approach it that, in a sense, it's leaning forward and just not falling down. So keep it simple. And there was a saying there that was, first, you make it easy, then you work on making it light. And as you get good at making it light, you can transition into smooth as you gain finesse and the skill and the greater connection and awareness between the body and the road. And finally, through all that practice and deliberate repetition, you may reach a point where you get fast. But if easy is all you get, then that's pretty good. I like to keep that on my desktop background. It applies to many things. As we're drawing here, as we start to repeat and flow, we may be able to have that lightness, very delicate touch to the page. Perhaps our motion becomes smoother, our either acceptance or ability with the circle in its true form, or perhaps wobbly form, becomes easier through each repetition. And then we might find ourselves going faster. And we can use that as an opportunity to question, is my speed a letting go? Just allowing my hand to move the way it wants because it's found a rhythm. It's found comfort in the connection with all these nerves and this medium that we're using. Or am I getting impatient? Is the repetition too much? Perhaps lulling me into a desire to finish. And with that feeling, to breathe into it for a little while. Bring it back to easy and slow it down. As we breathe in around the circle, breathe out around the circle. In and out. And with several rounds of attention to the breath, the speed goes away. And perhaps it just is what it is. Doing this for a while, so it's easy for that breath and motion to fall into the background, to be absorbed into the now. And just relax into that repetition, as we might be ending our time to prepare ourselves for the next part of the day's adventure. We can use the breath with more deliberate, deep ins and outs. Fill the lungs from the bottom all the way up to the top, and empty from the top down to the bottom. Into the space of the belly, sternum, the upper chest, and then out from all of the action of the diaphragm. Let that breathing engage our muscles in our core and our back. Lift and rise our shoulders and our clavicles. Start to move our arms up and down a little bit as the extra oxygen wakes up other parts of our mind that have fallen to the background and preps them to be ready to engage with the day. And keeping this one rhythm of repetition as part of our awakening. After a few good deep breaths, allowing the eyes to expand their focus from the very inward space of each individual ring or circle that develops these small coffee stains, pebbles on the page, to see a bit more of the whole shape, the whole pattern that has emerged over the course of these 20 minutes or so, and perhaps start to place a few of the rings within gaps or opportunities in the pattern. Maybe revisiting some other old rings, going over them again, give them more thickness, more density, or more solidity, as we just use that scanning of our eyes to come back into our awareness of what's around us, to look around the page and see what's there, make small adjustments like wiggling our fingers, helps moving the body a little bit more while we draw, turning the head from side to side, turning the hips from side to side. I need to set up my space to do this in a more standing position. So much time sitting each day with all the computer work. But at least I can remember to move and stretch, lift the arms above the head at some point, extend the legs, whatever is available and comfortable for you. And it's an opportunity to start to fill in some of the composition, what we might have found in this cyclical exploration. I think something like this is a great opportunity to bring out some colored pencils or some kind of graphite or crayon or something that can start to fill in the space around within all of this action that we've created. I have this pencil ready. I think I put away my colored pencils, but I'm going to work with the gray for now and just do a little bit more drawing here, have a little fun with what we've created today. I encourage you to continue the practice, try out these different exercises every day, and see where they lead. Let's get into it. Thank you all very much for joining. I hope this cycle of shading, of layering, of adding density to begin to fill out a page one element at a time, slowly building to a larger pattern, organically driven by our eye, our hand, and the space provided to us by the page and this act of drawing and awareness. Take care and have a wonderful week. Until next time, keep drawing.